An honor to call into session the April 23rd meeting of the Mountlake Terrace City Council. This is our work session. Let's do a attendance roll call with our clerk, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Here.
Mayor Woodard.
Present.
Councilmember Murray.
Present.
Councilmember Doyle.
Present.
Councilmember Page.
Present.
Councilmember Sonmore.
Here.
Councilmember Matsumoto Wright.
Here.
That concludes roll call.
Thank you, City Clerk. Moving on, do we have any general public comment in person or online?
We do have one in person, but I'll read the protocol first. The city welcomes general public comments at the beginning of council work sessions and meetings and comments on particular agenda items at the time they are discussed. Public comments are for the official record. Council does not respond to comments or questions during this time. Address the council as a whole, and comments shall pertain to topics, not individual council members, staff, or audience members. Limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes. The clerk will terminate comments beyond this allotted time or if there is a violation of these guidelines. Written comments received will be added to the official record but will not be read aloud. Benita, 5 minutes at the podium.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Venita Francisco, and I'm here tonight to share a few thoughts on home fire safety, especially in light of the Tallis Wood apartment fire this past Friday. The incident was a powerful reminder of how quickly fire can impact a community. Residents were displaced, people and pets needed rescue, and families had to leave their homes with little notice. And at the same time, it was also a powerful example of community in action. I want to take a moment to recognize and thank South County Fire, Support 7, the American Red Cross, and the many community members who've stepped in right away to support those families. The kind of coordinated response matters, and it makes a real difference in those first critical hours. What I want to share tonight is simple. Home fires move fast. We often have just a couple of minutes, 2 minutes, to get out safely. That means what we do before an emergency really matters. In honor of Children's Day, I brought a resource we use to teach this in a simple, accessible way called Prepare with Pedro. It breaks fire safety down into a few key ideas. When you hear a smoke alarm, beep, 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 you act right away. You get low and go if there's smoke. You have a meeting place outside. You get out and stay out. They're simple messages, but they only work if families have talked about them ahead of time. So tonight is really about sharing it and awareness. These are conversations happening every day through fire service, through community partners, schools, and organizations like the Red Cross. So the work is happening and the resources exist. This moment and moments like the Tallis Wood fire remind us why that matters. Because while response is critical, and we saw how strong this community is, preparedness is what helps people act in those first few moments before help arrives. I'm grateful for the response we saw this weekend and for the ongoing work happening behind the scenes to support residents, not just in emergencies and after, but to help them be ready. That's Mountlake Terrace, ready, resilient, and showing up for each other. Thank you for your time.
There's no more public comments.
Thank you. Then we will roll over to the Proclamation for Children's Day, which will be read by Councilmember Murray.
All right. Well, I feel very honored. Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to read this proclamation. I think I have said before, so I will say it again. I think this is my favorite meeting of the year. And we have lots of amazing meetings and lots of really good stuff. But I think it is particularly meaningful to see all of the young folks in our community who join us for this event and, you know, just being able to celebrate them and to spend time with them and to see them grow. We had some folks come back this year some children come back this year who had attended previous events, and it was just neat to see them get more confident in their abilities to get on that microphone and share their wishes and hopes for our city. So with that, City of Mountlake Terrace Proclamation, Celebration of Children's Day 2026. Whereas we are reminded on this day to nurture, protect, and support all children in our lives, and that young people all around us exemplify compassion, tolerance, and protecting others. And whereas in 1925, International Children's Day was proclaimed in Geneva during the World Conference on Children's Welfare, and whereas during April, the following places celebrate Children's Day: Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Palestine, Bolivia, Haiti, Colombia, Turkey, and Mexico, and others. And whereas in Taiwan and Hong Kong, Children's Day is celebrated April 4th, emphasizing the importance of future generations along with endeavors to promote their general well-being. The day features family-friendly functions, fun activities, and sporting events. And whereas in the Republic of Turkey, Children's Day is celebrated April 23rd. Traditionally, politicians hand over their seats to children for a day to govern, providing an opportunity for adults to listen to children's ideas. And whereas in Mexico, the Day of the Children is celebrated April 30th, when parents, schools, and businesses focus on making children feel special and loved through games, activities, and gifts. And whereas in the United States, April 23rd is Take Your Child to Work Day, to empower young people and to take bold steps toward their dreams, fostering the confidence and resilience they need to succeed. And whereas in Mountlake Terrace, the city provides parks, recreation, and open spaces for children to explore, encourages young people to participate in the civic process, and offers volunteer opportunities for youth. Now, therefore, Steve Woodard, on behalf of the City of Mountlake Terrace City Council, do hereby proclaim April 23rd as Children's Day. And with that, I would love to invite up one of our DEI commissioners, Krem Onat, who was really the driver of the creation of this event here several years ago, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about Children's Day.
I always get emotional for this holiday. I'll try to go through my speech. So April 23rd, known as the National Sovereignty and Children's Day, is a major national holiday in Turkey that celebrates both the founding of the Turkish Parliament in 1920 and the importance of children as the future of our nation. It's unique in that children symbolically take over government roles for the day, highlighting the strong cultural emphasis on youth and democracy. Children are the most precious treasure a community can possess, for in them are the promise and guarantee of the future. They bear the seeds of the character of the future society, which is largely shaped by what the adults of that community do or fail to do with respect to children. They are a trust no community can neglect with impunity. An all-embracing love of children and the manner of treating them, the quality of the attention shown them, the spirit of adult behavior toward them, these are all among the vital aspects of the requisite attitude. Love demands discipline, not to indulge, Love demands discipline, the courage to accustom children to hardship and not to indulge their whims and leave them entirely to their own devices. An atmosphere needs to be maintained in which children feel that they belong to the community and share in its purpose. Atatürk, founder of this day, says, "Young ladies, young gentlemen, you are all a rose, and a star and light of hope for the future. You are the ones who will truly bathe the country in light. Think about how important and valuable you are, and act accordingly in your studies and efforts. We have great expectations from you. Children in safe and comfortable homes, children who sleep on the streets, and children, those living in war zones facing violence, hunger, and genocide. I wish a happy Children's Day to all of them, because every one of them is the hope and promise for our shared future." Thank you.
Thank you, Karam. I was going to say, you always make us all misty in here, but will you come back up, and anyone who's here for Children's Day, would you join us for pictures and proclamations? Yeah, come on up. Parents can come up too if they'd like. Do you want to say anything? No. No? Okay. All right. Come on over and we'll take pictures.
Since you're a wolf, Brian. We're missing one. Coming in? We're missing a council. We got the camera guy here. We got my one for the newspaper. Hey, I love it. You sure you don't want to talk on the mic? You got phones. Go Wolves.
Hi.
There it is. I love it. All right, and we now have the honor of the proclamation for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and we're going to have that one read by Councilmember Page. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. And it's Children's Day. And I'm going to ask a few people to come up while I read the proclamation. Arts Advisory Commissioner Ben Ho, Councilmember Kyoko Matsumoto Wright, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commissioners Priya May Folden. Is Keo Peterson here? He? Okay. And Planning Commissioner Cameron Wu. Okay, I won't. Okay, thank you. The City of Mountlake Terrace Proclamation, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Whereas in 1977, legislation was introduced to designate 10 days in May as Pacific Asian American Heritage Week. Today, this month-long celebration includes and highlights Native Hawaiians, and whereas May was chosen to commemorate two key milestones: the arrival of the nation's first Japanese immigrants, May 7th, 1843, and Chinese workers' pivotal role in building the Transcontinental Railroad, completed May 10th, 1869. And whereas in the United States, we have more than 25 million Asian, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders, AANHPI people, and in both Washington and Mountlake Terrace, this group represents 11% of our population. This community originated from 42 different nations across Asia, Hawaii, and the Pacific Islands that now call our state home. And whereas this year's theme, as designated by the Federal Asian Pacific American Council, is Power and Unity, Strengthening Communities Together, which highlights the importance of leveraging our collective power, telling our stories, and being bridge builders in our communities. And whereas some of the many exemplary AANHPI leaders serve the city of Mountlake Terrace, including Councilmember Kyoko Matsumoto Wright, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commissioners Scott Masuda, Kermit Apio, Priya May Folden, and Keo Peterson, Arts Advisory Commissioner Ben Ho, Planning Commissioner Cameron Wu, and many other city volunteers. And whereas, please join the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission and Edmonds School District at celebrating cultures across the Pacific through music, dance, food, and art on May 2nd between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. at the Terrace Park Elementary School. Now, therefore, on behalf of Steve Woodard, on behalf of the Mountlake Terrace City Council, do hereby proclaim May as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And any one of you want to say something? Come on.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you. That really means a lot. And it's really amazing to see the community come together. And I feel lucky to be a member of the community here. So thank you, everybody.
I was just going to say it's such a pleasure to serve the community and the people of Mountlake Terrace. It's really awesome to be able to put our energies, my energies, and to help inspire people to do the same as well, to make our community that much better. So that's all I had to say.
I think you hear from me enough, but thank you so much.
So we're actually going to invite anyone who identifies with the community up for the photo. You're welcome to join us.
Bonita, won't you come up, as well as any DEI commissioners?
You can come over. You identify, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right, and now we will move into the review of Perteet Main Street Phase 2 and 3 Agreement, Supplement Number 6, and that is with our traffic engineer, Mr. Merrick. He is here. Hey, I didn't see you, John. Welcome.
Uh-oh.
No, it was
I
a
think I
good
need
thing.
to leave.
No, it was a good thing. One of the kids had a question about a sidewalk. I'll leave that kid anonymous for now. They can follow through. And we said that we would be very happy to connect them to you and that you would take their concerns very seriously, which always good things about you, brother.
Well, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Today I'm in front of you to present a supplement to an existing contract that we currently have with Perteet for professional services for completing design, bid documentation, and right-of-way services for the construction of Main Street Phase 2. So the contract in general kind of fits in with council goals, in particular growing our vibrant community and responsible governance to ensure desired level of service. So this contract was initially brought to council in end of January in 2024 for kind of review, and then subsequently brought back February 1st as a consent agenda item. I thought I was going to mess that up, but I got it. To give authorization to the city manager to sign the contract. And what the contract really is, it's, like I say, it's for the construction of Main Street Phase 2, and they're providing, kind of completing the design all the way through 100%, and then working through the certification process of that with WashDOT, and then preparing the documents to put to a bid and award the contract. As part of that, it also includes right-of-way services, so helping with the acquisition of the necessary right-of-way needed for for the construction of the project. So that includes title searches, appraisals, negotiating with those property owners to reach a settlement agreement, and then ultimately certifying kind of that right-of-way for the project. So in 2024 and 25, the Main Street project really consisted of improvements along 56th between 236th and 230th Street, and then improvements along both 232nd and 234th. And we had tried to, we applied for unsuccessfully to get additional funding through federal grants, the RAISE and the BUILD grant. After kind of not being successful after 2025, we thought, let's resize it to match kind of the funding that we do know we have. So we kind of reduced the scope. The scope was resized so that it's just improvements on 56 between 236 and 232nd Street. But in doing so, then it also meant we also looked at, can we resize the amount of right-of-way that we need? And we could, which was great. But it meant that we had to kind of go back to some of those property owners and kind of work through some agreements that we kind of initially thought we had and what we needed. So what this supplement does really kind of funds that additional work that the consultant provided for us in helping with that shift of right-of-way need that we have. So that's what the supplement is for. The initial contract was for $2.88 million back in 2024. There's been a couple supplements to the contract already that it raised that contract amount by about $322,000. This supplement would add an additional $106,000. So with that, I'll just.
Question?
Oh, and it is within our existing budget. Yeah.
Perfect. Questions, comments, feedback? All right. Seeing none, I guess you need any direction from us, or this is consent calendar?
No, it'll come back to you as a consent agenda.
Consent agenda
I
item.
knew I was going to mess that up.
All good. I did as well.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Well, thank you for your time and energy. We will now move to review of the fiscal sustainability recommendations, and that's listed with our Deputy City Manager, Carolyn Hope, and I'm going to leave it there. Oh, no, actually, we do have folks joining her. Recreation and Parks Director, Jeff Betts, as well as our building official, Matthew Gizzle. Am I saying your last name right? Did I? Okay, I thought I did. I wasn't 100% sure. That said, for folks who don't know, our finance director is not able to join us this evening, but the expertise is still in the room.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Mayor and council members. We're happy to join you tonight to review at a higher level the proposals before you for fiscal sustainability measures and to answer questions that you have, in hopes that at our next meeting on May 7th, that if we need to do a little more review, we can, but we're hoping that we can vote on the strategies for financial sustainability in the early part of May, as we have some budget meetings planned at the end of May to discuss the proposals with the community. So tonight, again, the purpose is to discuss our long-term budget strategies for the general fund. And really what we're going to focus on in our discussions tonight is there have been different recommendations from council members about how we reduce the 5% in our general fund. So we want to talk about that a little. Evaluation of revenue options and discussion about a future levy as opposed to a Metropolitan Parks District. And then to review each of the package's potential financial impacts on taxpayers. And then lastly, last meeting, apparently there was discussion about discount programs. So we wanted to make sure the community and you all were aware of the discounted programs available for property taxes and utilities. So in summary, the Fiscal Sustainability Task Force proposed some strategies for you, and they were a mixture of reductions, of partnerships, of revenue increases, and efficiencies. We brought back some more details that changed those numbers a little bit, and we provided two options for the council, Proposal 1 and Proposal 2. The main differences are highlighted in bold, and we'll go through those in more detail here in the next few slides, but generally speaking, Proposal 1 has a higher levy rate if we go with that parks, safety, and transportation levy in the future. And the Proposal 2 has a lower levy rate, but uses some more fee increases to help us get to the final number. So I wanted to take a second and talk about the 5% proposals, and we're not going to go through it line by line tonight unless you have questions. But generally speaking, we had a combined goal of about 1.3 million. So that was both, that was all the reductions. So really, it's the 5%, it's the software efficiencies, and historical budget savings. I just wanted to go through some of the council comments that we heard. So one, there were some comments that maybe we could reduce FTEs by attrition, efficiencies, and automation through AI. I want to note that the city manager is already critically looking at every vacancy that occurs. We have 2 positions frozen already since even the last couple of months. So we're trying to evaluate whether we can live without them or not. So we'll be very selective in whether we move forward with filling every vacancy. Certainly there are vacancies that will have to be filled, and we are, still recruiting for some of those. But as of today, we have a frozen position in finance and in police. And so we'll be looking at whether we can sustain those, and if we can, then in this 5% proposal that we shared with you before, we don't have to make any additional changes. So, and we'll continue to do that. I will say that we are interested in being efficient. We sent a couple of folks to lean training, and we're working on trying to work through some processes with that. Also, we did adopt an AI policy. I would say that the staff needs some more training and tools to be efficient at that. But I would say that there's not a lot of just general data processing that we're doing, and it's not likely to save a whole FTE, but it would definitely save us more time. And we're continuing to get ourselves up to speed on those ideas. There was a concern about cutting training, and I want to say that the training reductions proposed here in these line items are not wiping out training for any department. It's really just removing like out-of-state training for like a national conference if it's not required. So certainly, like the finance director just went to a conference that was out of state because it was the only one available, and we really needed that training. But if it's an optional thing like the International City Managers Association or something like that, we can go to the state conference and we're fine. We're not losing out necessarily, unless the city manager gets an award or something. But yeah, we reduced that in 2 departments where we saw
We have a question.
savings.
Yes.
I'd like to see your policies on going to conferences, because you talk about historical data, and I believe it was last year we sent 4 people to the city managers conference. Mm-hmm. And in the past, historically, what we did was we would send a city manager 1 person, mm-hmm. and it would be every couple of years, because the city understood at the time we didn't have all the funds for that. And in the last few years, I've seen that grow and other things grow. So do you have historical data that you're putting into place that would help our financial responsibilities? Because they don't have to go to a lot of these conferences. Mm-hmm. We elect to send somebody. So are you putting in place those policies in our financial books so we understand it in the future so this doesn't keep on happening?
Well, I guess, one, we have a budget for training, and so we're trying to stick within our budgets for training, and I think we've been doing so. That particular conference that you're talking about, the Washington City Managers Association has been trying to encourage staff who are not in city management to learn about the profession and encourage them to join the profession.
Right, and I understand that, and I've seen that, but if you can't afford it, you can't afford it, right?
Well, it was a choice about whether they attended that conference or a different conference. And so that was, the city manager wanted to encourage associate membership in WCMA. And that's what we've been doing the last couple of years.
But and then you also said we are cutting training, though.
We're cutting some training, yes. Yep.
But are you going to put policies in place from learning all of this? So it doesn't, because we keep on talking about historical budget savings, and so you should learn from the past, but I don't see a lot of that happening.
Well, the city manager has to approve any out-of-state training. Directors have to approve any training for their teams. And I think in that decision-making process is whether or not that's essential training for the staff, if it's worth them being out of the office that much, and the cost, of course, for them going. So I'm happy to talk more about what kind of policy you're referring to. But I think living within the means that we have set for ourselves and making sure that the training is appropriate is what we're doing. Okay. Let's see, there were also some concerns about cutting police. And I just wanted to say we understand that we're understaffed compared to national standards, that we haven't increased the size of our police department in years. No one wants to cut staff in any department. However, police is our largest cost for personnel. And it's hard to not look at police when we're looking at cutting staff in every other department. So we certainly are making these decisions in coordination with command staff, and this is not just the city manager working in a silo making these decisions.
Sorry, we have another question.
I just wanted to ask a question because we're supposed to be making a decision at the end. And in the past years that we've gotten charts illustrating our staff by department year by year, so we know how many staff is in each department, and so we can see how it grows. And then we used to get a list of all the positions and the salaries, so we'd understand what's changed in the past year. And it would be really useful to see maybe before the raises and then post-raise, because I know in the book I was reading tonight, it was talking about how we have incremental increases, and it would give the council a better understanding of these positions, because I understand some positions are frozen, but I didn't understand the other position. Were we going to hire another communications specialist on top of the other one that we had? And then there was some other questions. So when we're looking at staffing, it would be really beneficial for the council to understand who all our staff are on position-wise. And that would be beneficial for us to see all the positions, because we're talking one here and one there. But if we don't have the overall picture of how many we have and where they're all located, it doesn't paint the whole picture for us.
Sure. In the March presentation, which I linked in your staff report, we did have a chart of how many positions we have in each department. It's not year by year. I've been trying to gather that data. It's not as easy to come by as you might think. And we do list all the positions and salaries in Appendix A of the budget. They're not by individual, they're just the positions and their salaries. If you want individual, we can talk about that. Okay, and then I think the other thing, the theme that we've heard from the community and council are that people are protective of parks, recreation, and events. It's the thing that people use the most, that they affiliate most closely with the city. They're out there in their community, and we all agree that that's very difficult to cut, and it's the area that's subsidized by the general fund, and it's not as required as some of the other things that we have to do as a city. So certainly we need to make sure, as we talked about a few months back, making sure that we have someone, in the city clerk position, in the city manager position, in finance, so that we can make sure we can run the city. So, and all of those departments will see reductions if we don't meet the revenue goals. So, also, let's see, there was a question about the miscellaneous line item for recreation and historical budget savings. I just wanted to mention that that was an amount that didn't match up in the end. When it was being finalized, it was a redundancy, and so we're just getting rid of that redundancy. So, are there any questions about the reductions before we move on?
Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Deputy City Manager. Appreciate the continued conversation and follow up on all of the conversation last time. Since we've got Jeff here, I would love to just, ask a question about, because two of the FTE reductions are historical budget savings. Two are service reductions, right? And we heard a little bit because we had our police department here last time. They spoke to some of that because they were here, and I guess we didn't have Jeff here necessarily as part of the conversation. So in terms of the potential service cut associated with a reduction in FTE, I mean, I would love to understand what that means in terms of service reduction.
Yeah, I think that service reduction, it will have a dramatic impact on weekend service, really, is what will come down to. We been able to augment a little bit with some of the seasonal staff. And so we have some of those dollars budgeted now. So we still, according to this presentation, we haven't reduced those seasonal staff that I know of. So that would still be included. So during a few months of the year, we would have weekend service, according to this presentation. So yeah, definitely would impact our proposal going forward for shelter revenues as well, of reducing staff, kind of makes that more difficult to achieve. But, you know, we would find a way to achieve those revenue goals through those shelter revenues.
Thank you. No, I appreciate the additional information. Yeah, and I guess no other questions, at least at this point.
Councilmember Sonmore.
Can I ask a question for the city council reduced cost for professional services? Did our retreat cost $20,000?
No, it didn't. It cost about $8,000, and we had about $30,000 in the budget.
Councilmember Page.
Prioritize bookings. And I'm sorry I wasn't here, at the last meeting, but can you explain that a little bit to me? Does that, in the long run, make us less safe in any way as far as making decisions as to what's going to get, what crime is going to be a booking and not?
It is, to your point, deciding which cases are sent to prosecution. And so maybe a misdemeanor or a certain level of, I'm not a legal expert,
Okay.
so there's some threshold in which they would decide whether to prosecute or not, because once we send it to the court, we're paying for prosecution and public defense and the court fees, so, and potentially jail services.
And I understand if you don't have the answer to this, but is this, as is written now, any way different or more different than what they're doing already as far as, prioritizing bookings? Because what jumps in my mind is that when I see prioritized bookings, a whole slew of worries pop in my head as to, who we're going to prosecute, what type of person we're going to prosecute, what type of crime are we going to let go. We hear a lot in the community now that, bookings crimes aren't being, being sent, or people aren't getting booked for crimes, because of all these various reasons. A lot of people don't understand that it's just a revolving door. But when I see prioritized bookings, and I just wonder, what is that going to look like, and how is the community going to perceive what that looks like? If that's what we're saying, that this is something we may wind up doing. I think we need like a really good explanation to the public and to those that are going to wonder, well, what does a prioritized booking mean? Because that's what.
Well, I'll say that this isn't an open door sort of situation. Mm-hmm. This is a small part of the total cost to prosecute crimes. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars spent by the city in prosecution, public defense, jail time, and our own officers' time to do the paperwork for this. So it is, it would be the lower level crimes. It would probably be people who it's their first offense. I can't speak for the police department, but we can get you some more information about that.
I guess we just got to be mindful of the language. I think that, people get nervous when they hear that. I mean, everyone talks about how safe Mountlake Terrace is. That's all they come up and say. It's a very safe place.
Yeah.
And I think that when they hear the language of prioritizing bookings, it creates a negative effect, versus how we're maybe doing better with less. Okay.
We'll go Councilmember Doyle, then Councilmember Sonmore.
Thank you, Mayor. I was looking at removing the vacant commissioned officer position, and I said in a previous meeting I wasn't in favor of that, and then I was thinking there was a big assumption that I hadn't realized I had when I spoke out against removing that, and that is, is there a direct relationship between the number of police in your city and the safety? And if so, like, is removing a position detrimental to a city, and is there actually an increase in crime? I was assuming that this was a causal relationship, that more is more. I think that's an assumption that, of course, we want emotionally more protection. We want more good officers, but I wonder, and I don't actually know if there is a direct relationship with that. And if there's a reduction in crime for an extra officer, is it for some crimes? Is it for all crimes? Or is there another way of approaching that? So I was assuming it was more is more. And I'm not sure that, I don't know that that's true because I'm not a law enforcement professional. So, comment.
Okay, I can talk to the police department about that and see if we can get you an answer.
Councilmember Sonmore.
So can you tell me, with this, I'm seeing that there would be one layoff out of all of this?
Right now, that is the proposal. However, right now we have 2 positions frozen. And so if we were to maintain that, like right now we have a vacant officer frozen and we have a finance person frozen. So if that remains the case, we wouldn't have to lay anyone off.
The parks person
Right.
would not. So was your intent to hire 2 communication positions?
No, well, that was on the books. We reclassified, we added a communications manager at some point a couple of years ago, and the specialist position stayed on the books. There was some, I don't know what the reasoning was. I think it was even before 2 budget cycles ago.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was, yeah, we actually added that position when Virginia was here, because she was a one-person show at the time and doing everything and needed some help, and we agreed through discussion, what was that, 4 years ago now, to add that position, but we never filled it. So it's been on the books since then, but we never were able to get that position filled.
Yeah.
Others, questions, comments, feedback? So I want to recognize we have a lot of slides, so I'm sure you'll get to this. But before we leave the prioritized bookings, because you said you bring this back to the police department, if you can also make sure that we have a conversation about risk management, because I hear something different about prioritizing bookings. I hear racialized, and now I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to open my police department to, I'll just say it, racial bias or something along those lines. So whatever that classification is going to be, I'm sure they will work with our attorney or something, however that works, to figure that out. But that just feels like a save 90 to get sued for $1 million, right? So just putting that out there. I'm like, I don't want to save short money to find myself exposing us to bigger problems. And police departments have enough going on that they don't need us instilling new ways in which to critique the work. That said, we need to find this money somewhere, so I'm not saying take it off. I'm just saying make sure that we're really asking the right questions around that very nebulous term, prioritize.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you for your comments. The revenue proposals. So we have about 5 different revenue proposals on the table. We've talked about the fleet partnership, youth program, aquatics program, and rental program increases in recreation and development fee increases. We have sort of what our goal was in the one column and our new revenue projections based on some data crunching in the right column, and we're going to go through those with you in detail here. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Betts.
Okay, hopefully this slide looks kind of familiar. It's kind of similar to what we usually bring to you for a fee schedule. So this would be taking a look at youth programs. And so the goal here was to come up with $100,000 total between youth and aquatics. So that was the exercise we undertook. We actually exceeded it a bit, but I'll give you a little bit of information. So the center columns are the 2026 resident and non-resident fee. And then in red to the right is the 2027 proposed fee with a 10% increase. So the current increase for this youth camps that we were going to propose for next year was 5%. So instead of doing 5%, this would incorporate a 10% increase for school-age camps, specialty camps, before and after. So everything there is basically for summer camps. So this would be something that would go into effect for summer 2027. And so we will come back to you still towards the end of this year, as we usually do, for the fee schedule. And that will incorporate all of our fees that we'd recommend for 2027. But this is part of this exercise to make sure that we're incorporating additional revenue.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jeff, thank you for bringing this out. And we've had previous discussions about how we want to handle fee adjustments. But one of the things that we've discussed and really haven't implemented, and I'm just curious, what would a 5% reduction in residential residents only and 10% in non-residents be? As I understand it, about 2/3, if you average everything out, about 2/3 of all participants in our recreation programs are non-residents. So we'd still be bringing in more funding with the 10%. So in other words, it wouldn't just be as easy as cutting the increase in half, right? So I'm curious if we've considered that. What was the thought process in not going that direction? Or if that's feasible and something we can put on the table.
Yeah, it varies. If you remember from last year when we talked about this, it varies per program of the resident, non-resident percentage. That 33% number that you had before was based on aquatics. So for childcare, it's much different. For camps, it's much more residents. It's much more Mountlake Terrace residents that utilize the service. And then we'll talk about before and after school, and that is totally split as well because Madrona is mostly non-residents. So they would go there and pay the non-resident fee, and then at Mountlake Terrace Elementary or at the Recreation Pavilion, it'd be a lot more residents. So the same program would pay two different rates, depending if you're in Edmonds or Mountlake Terrace, essentially.
Okay, so I guess the question gets back to, and I think childcare, personally, I'd rather leave that off the table and not see increases in that program at all, just because there's such a tremendous need to provide childcare. But I'd be curious what the numbers would be if we did 10% in non-resident and 5% for resident.
Yeah, I think that we could run those numbers, come up with something, see what the difference would be.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So this, as mentioned, this is the youth camps proposal, what the fees would be. And so we didn't adjust all fees of what we're coming here tonight. It's really just a few that we've targeted through some comparisons that we did to show where we are in the market. And these are the ones that we feel like that there is room to increase the fees, and that could actually make an impact on our revenue issues. So the second slide is for preschool and our kids' crew programs. And we've been kind of aggressive increasing these fees over the last few years. And part of that is some of the reasons we've talked about before is that we are predominantly on the lower end, which is great for affordability, but it also puts us at a disadvantage when we're increasing, our expenses are increasing, but our revenues are not increasing as fast. And so there's a lot of programs, most programs that charge more than we do. And it is, like I mentioned, is a great service, but it's also, there's a cost to that. So this would be all of our preschool, before and after school programs.
Councilmember Page.
Thank you. What percent of, because we have a discount program, right?
As far as a scholarship program?
Yeah.
We have a scholarship program. So residents receive a 10% discount that non-residents don't.
Okay.
That's the standard pricing for everybody.
Okay, all right, so there isn't anything other for those that are really in need?
There is.
Okay, what percent of, those folks are represented here?
So for childcare, the state offers a subsidy. So you have to qualify for that. It is a very low, it's like poverty level. Excuse me. So it is difficult to qualify for. There are quite a few kids in our program that do qualify and do utilize that. In addition to that, council did authorize a $5,000 budget line item annually, and that it's new. Originally, it was ARPA money, and then this cycle is the first time we've actually budgeted general fund money to help with subsidize some of the childcare issues. And so that's been utilized. I think that most of what ends up happening is people apply for it, but they don't fully utilize the dollars after they apply for it. But I think we were in the $4,000 range last year of what was actually used. We also have the Michelle Ringler Scholarship Fund, which is anybody in the school district that lives in the school district can utilize, as opposed to the Mountlake Terrace one is just for Mountlake Terrace residents. And that's donations only, the Michelle Ringler one. So those are 3 different options that we have.
And I have another question, and I know it came up in the last meeting. Are there any other programs outside of us that use tier financial pricing?
As such as depending on your income for the annually of what the pricing would be. I have not seen any other than what was emailed, I think yesterday by Councilmember Doyle. I think that was in Fairfax County. And yeah, I did read that in some of their associated reports. I do have concerns. We can bring back some more information about that. Really, the main concern is just elevated costs and efficiencies. I think some of that was highlighted in the articles that were attached to that they were estimating $12 million extra to be able to afford that program, that they were going to have to budget. So some of that's administrative to try to go through those kind of things, and additionally some subsidies for the kids that couldn't afford it, that didn't meet that eligibility level.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sonmore.
I have a curiosity question. I know that a lot was looked at for helping with childcare. So if it's subsidized by the state, does the state pay us then?
No. So they do work with us through that system, but the subsidy level it's handled in a unique way. And there's several different programs. So there's a few different, there's the childcare related one, and then there's a couple different programs that I brought to council that we partner with the state on. There's the disability, it's the DDA. I cannot remember the exact acronym, but there's 2 different programs to utilize recreation services that we have contracts with. One's respite care, I believe. And so that's not childcare related, but that's a different program where they get basically reimbursed for their services, for able to use recreation services. But it is a discounted rate, and the city doesn't get necessarily fully repaid for the cost of that service. It's not like the full going rate for that program, but we are able to assist with those childcare positions.
And so we would remove that from the $100,000 cost, the $5,000, and any state subsidized. So are we looking at the true total intake that you're looking to make?
So this current proposal of $100,000 would be in addition to our normal revenues. So our revenues altogether for preschool is one number that we have in the budget, and kids crew is another. So this is just increasing those numbers by a total of $100,000.
Oh, how does this compare to, I know you always have the comparison chart, because I know when I had to pay for daycare, it just seemed astronomical to me, and I was trying to add the numbers up of how much it is a week. And how do we compare to other places close to us if we do this?
So normally I show you some great charts, and that was a lot of work to put together in a short amount of time for me, but.
A guesstimate, maybe?
Yeah, I did have some numbers here. We don't know what people are going to charge next year. And one caveat that I didn't mention is the childcare fees go into action in September. So we need to make a decision of whether we want to enact that for the 26-27 school year, or we want to wait till next September to actually enact those changes to the fees. And so when we go to council towards the end of the year, normally it's for that following September, not the one that just had passed by a month, so to speak. So those fees, we've done a little bit of analysis, and I'll give you whether we're high or low based on that. I think that the preschool rate is much below the Montessori. For example, like Briar Kindercare is $1,900 a month. The preschool number with the cost increase for residents is $1,242. So still quite a bit lower than what like a Kindercare would be.
It's $1,200?
$1,242.
Okay.
And then some other comparisons we did. The Montessori is quite a bit higher. Just for reference, though, that was over $2,000. So we're still below those numbers. I think Greater Kids Academy I have on here is a little over $2,000 a month also. So childcare costs have really escalated over the years, and we have not been escalating with it to match that.
I know Montessori, it's always been quite a bit more, but Kids Crew, where's that one? Is
So
that in
those are
Briar?
preschool numbers for like full care, full day care. So then for Kids Crew, we have some other comparisons. So the main comparison we use for before and after school programming is Right at School, and they're at every single Edmond School District facility, including some of the ones that we're in. But I believe that their, like, for instance, their before care rate is $345 and $441 individually you pay per month. And then our new rate would be $408 for non-residents. It'd be, hold on, let me double check my numbers here. I think my chart's missing the resident rate for MLT Kids Crew for that one. There it is, 371 and 408 would be our two numbers with the 10% increase for resident, non-resident. So it would be higher than Right at Schools. So that's for Kids Crew. So our before and after school program would be 371 for residents before, and then Right at School would be 345. So our number will be higher than theirs, depending if they increase their fees, which they probably will as well.
Stand it right, sorry, Ken, I was looking at down. So Kids Crew, we're going to up for residents to $675 and for non-residents $741. But you just said that Kids Crew is $3.45 an hour?
No. So the resident rate would be $337.
Oh, okay.
And non-resident would be $370.
Okay. Thank you.
And Right at School, they charge one fee. They don't have resident, non-resident, it's $345. Our after-school rate would still be lower than theirs. Theirs is higher than that. And then our before and after would still be lower than theirs as well. It's just before school that would be higher than theirs.
Councilmember Murray.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Jeff. And, you know, I have all sorts of opinions about parks and recreation and childcare fees, and I'm trying not to get too in the weeds there because I know we're talking about bigger picture and budget. I would echo what Mayor Pro Tem Wall said about, again, I would really love to see us, you know, move toward the market in terms of non-resident fees and continue to hold costs down where we can for residents. But I guess question for you, since you brought up what is it?
Right at School.
Right at School, thank you. I guess as we talk about potentially starting to outprice them, I guess I'm curious where we're at in terms of with the school district. And I guess for those that don't know, there used to be different childcare providers at schools across the district. Mm-hmm. They came into the district, and outside of our program, which is serving 3 different schools, there are no other providers in
Correct.
the schools now. And so I guess in terms of our relationship and contract with the school district, like, does that have an end date? Are there, like, I guess where, like, I wouldn't want to price ourselves out of ensuring that we get to continue to maintain those services at the schools that we are providing them for. And I know that's not fully within our purview.
Yeah, the current interlocal agreement that council approved, I do not remember the new date for it, but there is an extension to it. So we have quite a few more years left on that date that allows us access to the schools. But even with, as I mentioned, even with the rate increase, we would be below their price on 2 of the 3.
Okay.
And not knowing what they're going to increase their rates to as well. And didn't mention, but, you know, there's a few more comparisons. I can send this council as well, but The Aldwood Boys and Girls Club charges $410, $420, and $650, which exceeds ours across the board.
Oh, I think our rates are, for what it's worth, as somebody who has had young children in recent years, like, I know our rates are great, which again is why I think moving towards the market for, particularly for non-residents, is absolutely the thing to do. I just wouldn't want to see us outprice our competitor, and I think that's where, like, we start to get into, like, some line item decisions. Like, it seems a little, I mean, in an ideal world, I don't think we would, like, outcharge them for morning care, but, like, undercharge them for afternoon care, right? But also recognize that's a more nuanced kind of line-by-line approach that perhaps we will engage in this coming year when we have those conversations. But I do think in terms of high level, again, I would echo, I think the ask from Mayor Pro Tem Wall to better understand if we were only to raise, if not only, but if we were to raise resident costs 5% and maintain the proposed 10% for non-residents, what would the impact to the budget be? So, yeah, and I know you don't know that, but that's, I would love that information so we can continue the conversation.
I appreciate that. And as mentioned, you're right, this is much more of a 20,000-foot view at this point, but we will get into the weeds much more for the fee schedule. But this exercise, trying to come up with the money, is where we're at.
No, appreciate that very much, Jeff, so thank you.
Okay, so moving past youth programs onto aquatics. And so this fee schedule is incorporating a 10% increase, and the original increase was 3%, is what was scheduled for 2027. So this would be going 7% beyond that amount. And we did a little bit of research on this as well, and just to point out what this includes, it's basically all of our aquatics programming. It really is the whole thing. There's drop-in and swim lessons, aquatic instruction here. It doesn't include our safety programs. That hasn't been included in the fee increase, but everything that's the major programming would be an increase by that 10% rate from what the current rate is. And so we're calculating that as about a $98,000 increase. And one also point to make is that this is based on current numbers. So if we do see a reduction in numbers of people who are registered based on the fee increase, which happens at sometimes, obviously there's some of that happens when a business increases pricing, then we would see potentially lower revenue numbers than what's shown here. So revenues are never guaranteed. We're doing our best to generate those numbers, to have the people come in to register for them, and we are seeing an escalation in numbers, which is great. But just keep that in mind.
Councilmember Page.
Thank you. In the last 12 months, I recognize that we're, hoping for, some revenue gain. But in the last 12 months, how much revenue loss has there been due to malfunction of equipment?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? How much revenue loss? I didn't hear the last part.
As a result of malfunctioning equipment over at the pool?
And it's hard to quantify because we've stayed open, right? So there was a closure in January, though. And so on New Year's Eve, right, our pool pump went out, and there was a period of a good 10 days or so where it was not functioning and our pool wasn't functioning. But I could get those numbers. We could do some calculation. I actually already had that done. I just don't have it in front of me. But we can pull that. There's also the closure from last year. That was a lot longer. And so I have that as well that we can pull together, estimated losses. It's significant when you're down for a few months. So definitely something we want to avoid.
Well, obviously, we want to avoid, but as we are going forward, that's the big elephant in the room. What is this pool going to be doing in the next 12 months, 15 months? How much is that going to impact, this dollar where we're spending some incredible money just fixing things, and we're asking for monies at a really decent rate, to get people to come in. And, I think that's something that, really got to make sure that we are looking at, because those numbers may not even happen, just because of the breakdowns and the expenditures that, we're going to use to try to get everything back up again.
Yeah, to address that, the major systems that we have, not all of them, but a lot of the major systems we have failed, and we've replaced some of those parts. So we're hoping that those are going to be consistent going forward. There are other systems unrelated to the pool that could go down, obviously, like aging infrastructure like HVAC and things like that. But The HRU is what went out also in January, and we still haven't got that. It was 12 weeks out. And so there is some moisture issues that we're mitigating within the pool area. And so that it is concerned. We've been able to stay operational. Okay. So we've also replaced 2 pumps. So, and we've been able to do these things, what I consider to be on the cheap, to make it last economically. And so we haven't had to like do a total rebuild of elements. And so we're doing our best to keep that together, and it's looking, I'm feeling good about it.
Okay.
Yes, no, I appreciate that. And some of the comparisons you mentioned about the fees, just to point out that there aren't very many pools. And so we definitely have a captive audience. We don't want to abuse that. But at the same time, I have spoken to some of our pools that do exist around us, and they're experiencing, those cities are experiencing a lot of the same things we are, and they are going through the same exercise with increasing fees. And so I know that Linwood increased their fees 20% this year. So major hikes, and they're planning another hike this year or this next year, and they haven't determined that yet. But I'm assuming it will be somewhere around the same that we're doing. Okay. And so right now we're neck and neck fee-wise with them, and that's where we should be.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Okay, so some of the impacts for increasing the fees, we've discussed a little bit of this, but fee increases can deter some people from registering for classes. And we do want to be competitive and stay near some of our, and the agencies near us. And then also, we do need to maintain our service levels in recreation. So it is difficult if we don't continue to increase revenues so we can offset some of those costs. If we don't offset some of those costs, then we have to try to identify additional savings in the general fund elsewhere. And then some of the internal impacts, really improves the cost recovery for recreation and sports, closing the gap in the general fund if we do implement. And then additionally, it maintains our service levels, and then workloads can remain consistent that way. So the next proposal is shelter rentals. Mountlake Terrace has never rented their shelters out. We have 3 shelters in various sizes. So one at Veterans, one at Bicentennial, and one at Terrace Creek. And so Veterans can seat 15 approximately. These are very approximate. They can fit more if they really want to. Bicentennial is 15 as well, and Terrace Creek is about 20, and it has a barbecue. So this proposal would incorporate renting those out half day for residents, non-residents, then a fee separate, and then also for full day. And that assumes the revenue amount of $26,520 assumes 3 reservations per week. And that would incorporate an April start. So it's like April through September, I believe. Yeah, April 1st through September 30th. And some of the impacts of this, obviously the good part of implementing is community members can reserve a picnic shelter, because we get calls all the time about people want to reserve something instead of, I got to get down there at 7 a.m. and sit there all day for a party, which happens. And this might allow more people to utilize it if it's a booked time. And then it also generates revenues for the city. If we don't do it, we're going to have to identify other savings or revenues. And then some of the internal impacts is obviously we have to maintain this at a higher level of service. Currently, we do maintain it, but when somebody's renting it, there's an expectation that everything's going to be working, and everything's going to be clean, and we already do that, but it has a little higher level expectation. So it will require recreation staff as well to handle those reservations and payments. So a little extra, but we have that kind of internally built into what we do already, so we can build that out. But it also could potentially wear those elements out more and create more work orders for repair, inevitably.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Oh, you've got your mic.
This is Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to come today. We're going to talk about trying to reach our goal of $200,000 utilizing development fees. You'll notice from the first slide it says 7%, but actually we started diving in the data. It's going to be 9%. So what we did is we looked at the past 5 years as we adopted trying to evaluate every 5 years to make sure that we're feasible. And so in doing that, we looked at all our fees, and if basically we multiply, go everything above 9%, except for electrical residential and fire permits, that'll get us that $200,000. We didn't see it equitable to increase the electrical permits on residential because we're already more expensive than some other jurisdictions, including labor and industries. So we'd keep that as is. The proposed fees adjusted is modest, targeted, and aligned with regional trends. It improves cost recovery while maintaining competitiveness and minimizing impacts to key stakeholders. Mountlake Terrace will be competitive with these changes as the regional market continues to go up. The city of Linwood is currently at $228 per hour around. Shoreline is $267 an hour, and Edmonds is $143, but they have some add-ons that they add on to their permits at the end, so it's hard, they don't have a direct correlation on per hour. With this change, we'd go from $200 an hour to $218 an hour. That would increase our minor remodel over-the-counter permits, so that's kitchen, bathrooms remodels, from $465 to $505. Linwood, earlier this year, increased their fees by 14.7%, and they're looking at increasing them again as well. Shoreline, same thing, they're higher, as well as Edmonds, so pretty cost competitive if we approve this to go up the 9%. So just to keep reminders, this is just to keep us as we are now, status quo with our timelines. So these fees increase for some permits. However, the goal is to be competitive with other agencies. This helps maintain the service levels as we currently have in community development. We will need to identify savings or revenues elsewhere in the general fund budget. And then internal impacts, improving cost recovery for community development and supports closing the gap of the general fund by maintaining service levels and workloads that remain consistent currently.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Matthew, thank you for highlighting the challenges and the impacts, and particularly in trying to ensure competitiveness with other surrounding jurisdictions. But I would be remiss not to point out one of our other goals is affordable housing. And at another meeting, when I'm reviewing other meetings that I've been attending, I'll highlight a little bit more on this. But everything, just a reminder that everything we do has an impact on the cost of housing. And currently, jurisdictions impact what jurisdictions adopt, and there's good reasons for the things that we adopt, but currently, government impact on the cost of housing, it ranges from $75,000 to $125,000 additional dollars that we're adding to the cost of a house. So this is, so on one hand, it's necessary for our overall budget and maintaining service levels to the city, and in particular, another potential bonus that this provides is rather than cutting staff of the community development, this allows us to maintain the staff levels and ensure more efficient processing of permits. So I think that's on the plus side is that it helps us ensure that, but on the flip side, we do need to recognize, and I need to point out that, again, this is just another one of those little things that keep adding up to $75,000 to $125,000 that we're adding to the cost of every home, every unit, I should say.
Yeah, and I did do that average. So this is for average remodels, because that's one of our highest amount of permits that we go through. And the increase for those permits would be around $175 to $185 per permit. I'm sorry? Yeah, so the average for remodel on Mountlake Terrace, this increase would increase the average cost $175 to $185 per permit.
Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. A quick follow-up question to that, Matthew. How many permits does the average remodel need?
Yeah, so By combining our permits, a single-family residential remodel can get it all done in one permit. And then based on the fixtures that they add to it, it does increase the cost, but they all can be codified in one permit now.
That's great. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Sonmore.
Can you just tell me, the goal says 200 million? No.
200,000.
Sorry. Is that expected increase overall?
Yeah, so that's why we had to look at the past 5 years, because we can't predict how many permits are going to get pulled this year. So we do a 5-year cost recovery. So I took the past 5 years, which goes all back to 2021, where we didn't have a whole bunch of permit applications, as if we can remember why back then. Everyone was stuck at home and not wanting to do work on their house. Right after that, we had a big boom in permits, though, because they realized there are things that they wanted to upgrade. So we went the past 5 years, averaged them all out, so that way we have good, relevant data to kind of predict based on what the future may hold. So it should put us in a good place. We're not just going by last year's data.
So based off what Aaron just said, too, so so to get that $200,000, I mean, I don't know, can you say you have a 250, how many permits per year?
We have several thousand. Yeah, so we have several thousand applications. So like I said, we did the past 5 years, so I could get you those numbers if you'd like. But we average around, so if you remove fire and electrical permits, anywhere from 1,200 to 2,400. And then if you add all the other permits, electrical and fire, we're about 3,000 to 4,000.
Thank you.
Mayor has a question. Since we're talking permits and pulling back, can you remind everyone how we're actually tightening up the process to make sure people are receiving the permit or going after permits and not just going, oh, I didn't know I needed a permit, right? So if you might speak to that, because that will also impact hopefully that number rising that's been missed in the past.
Yeah, going out and educating the public, making sure they know when they need a permit is really paramount. We just had MLT Academy where everyone got to build a minor ADU. We gave out little rulers to people and it said, measure twice, permits first. Kind of cheesy, but I like it. So going out there and reminding the public when you need a permit and why you need a permit is very important and vital. And Laura, our co-compliance officer, is doing an amazing job. We always assume pure intent. Some people just don't know. So we always work on communicating them first and then getting them to apply for those permits. And last year, the amount of permits that came from Laura touching base with people was around $157,000 that we would have not gotten otherwise.
Thank you.
And if I may, you have a workshop coming up on permits this coming month, right?
We do. We're reevaluating that. We have a new director, so we're kind of pivoting slightly, but we are going to have more touch points with the community.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to go a little faster through these, and the point of showing these slides now is just basically to open this up for questions. If you have a question about these revenue ideas, since we've talked about them in depth a little bit more. So one is to use bank capacity of our property tax, and the FST proposed splitting the use of 100% of our bank capacity over 2 years. And I'll just show one other slide about this, and that there are certainly impacts to our taxpayers by doing this, and we have the numbers there in the left-hand column about what the annual cost would be. If we don't take the bank capacity, we'd be looking at $2.5 million worth of cuts, and we shared those with you in March, what that might look like, and some of them are listed there. Certainly, this is something that we'll need to communicate with the community about pretty heavily so that they're prepared. But are there any questions about this?
Respond more.
I like how you said the community would be prepared. I can tell you right now, they'll never be prepared, especially when we went out to this building several times to get the funding for this. We even went door to door. We had a very good campaign, but it's just like our water bills. People, you can tell them, but it won't matter until they have to actually, I'll say the old saying is write the check. So it'll help to let them know ahead of time, but I don't think we'll ever prepare our community for the increases of all the taxes they're going to get, because if I was a community member asking, I'd say, all these increases, what are you doing for me? You know, what am I getting for this? And so I think that's something that, because right now I don't see a lot of benefits to our citizens. I just see increasing everything, but they're not getting really anything in return.
Councilmember Page.
If I'm going to, try to, as a resident, and looking at where we are with this, I'm gonna try to give like my opinion as a resident, where if we didn't do this and we have the shortfall that we are going to have and the layoff of staff that we're going to need to lay off, then I know what I'm not going to have. I'm not going to have the services that I'm getting right now. I'm not going to have availability, to staff here in the city. I mean, you may have heard or may not have heard just the other day, somebody in the middle of the night, right down the street from over here on 228th and 66, shot off 6 rounds in a gun. And that's 10:30. And I believe at that time of the night, we only have 2 officers on duty, So, what are they getting? I would say, what am I getting? I'm getting at least what I have now. And I'm not losing that. So I'm not getting more. And I'm like everybody else. I would love to get more, if I'm paying for paying more. But I want to at least not lose anything if I have to pay more. And in these times, I think that with everything going up, I mean, we go to the grocery store, we pay more and we get less. We go and buy a car, we pay more, we get less. We go and want to go spend time at a park that we got to pay for, we pay more, and but we get less amount of time. So we do that every day. But we don't say that, well, I'm not getting anything for it because I'm still getting the service that I'm looking for. And so that would be my response, to that statement that, we're not getting more, but we're at least keeping what we have, and we have to pay more in order to keep what we have.
Councilmember Solomon.
I get all that, and I've been through this before, but I have to think of the people in our community that are living paycheck to paycheck, and they're not going to have any more money. And so groceries are a choice. Groceries, I can, reduce my groceries. I can look at things to reduce, but I'll still get water, I'll still get sewer, I'll still get some PD, I'll still get some road work. I get my electricity from PUD, I get my garbage from waste management. So I will still have my basics, but I have to consider all the people that are out there and everything's going up. Gas, our fire, everything. And looking at how, if we're going to have affordable housing, we talked about that too. Brian, is, with everything going up, how are we ever going to have affordable housing? And so to me, we have to make some really tough decisions, and we may have to do some things that we don't like. And I've been through this before, so is Kyoko and Brian, and there's some things that are going to get messy because if certain levies don't, or not levies, but if certain things don't pass, or if you start having people coming in here and screaming at you, it makes you see the world a little bit differently, because there are people that are out there living paycheck to paycheck, and my heart goes out to each and every person that is paying childcare, is looking at just trying to live. And when we aren't being really productive and cutting costs that we should have done a couple years ago, and really looked at how all those increases were going to affect us in the future, I think we would have thought about this differently. Because I can tell you, when we have people come in here and they are very upset because they don't have the money to pay these extra costs, it's heartbreaking. And so that's why I get really upset about the budget when we overspend, because you have to think of our residents out there, and it's really important to me that we try and do our best. And there's people out there hurting.
So I appreciate what I just heard, and I want to remind us, we don't debate each other, we debate concepts. Now, that said, we got to kind of get at, well, but you threw a concept out there. I want to make sure I reflect back what I'm hearing in the conundrum I feel like I was just placed in. Firstly, I think I'm being very thoughtful, so I won't bother with addressing that other than what I just said. And instead, I'll back up and say, help me understand that we understand that we aren't making the decision to grow. We're making a decision to stay the same or to cut. And I think I finally heard some tough decisions. I would love to stop talking in the ethereal because we're running out of time and put down, well, what exactly would we do differently? Because the conundrum I'm hearing is, and at the end of the day, everybody is going to pay more. That's not an option. You're going to pay more. That is the world we're living in. It's costing more. It probably cost more an hour ago or less an hour ago than it did an hour now, if you follow me. Like, it's just, that level of costs are out of control. But I also hear you saying that if we're going to ask them for more money, they should get more, but then you just said we should cut. We got to make some tough decisions to cut, which by definition would be less. So I just want to make sure, how do we get out of that? Because I'm not a professional politician. I'm trying to make sure that we're making some good choices here, so I don't know the language, but I want to know how, if I'm in a situation where it's going to cost more and the best we can do is hold on to what we have. And again, I said this last time and I'm going to say it again. This time it's 35 slides. Is any of the 35 slides so much as 0.5 growth, let alone a whole point, right? It's baseline, zero. The world we're in right now is zero. When you leave this room, we are still in baseline. However, apparently next month, early, we're going to have to make a decision about what that baseline looks like. It is not going up. It's either going down or we're spreading that cost across everyone to figure out how to maintain the baseline. But there's no growth. So again, I don't know how I give anybody more, because I'm going to have to ask you for more money, but I don't know how I'm going to give you anything more. But I can understand cut. So say that. And then let's start looking at that, because we're running out of time, right? And so I don't understand, again, someone walk me through how we get out of this, because this is not about growth, but I keep hearing implications that we're being extravagant here. We're going to have to make some tough choices. And I'm like, well, then point out where the extravagance is. That's what this whole exercise has been. We literally had a task force that other cities have now adopted that said, no, y'all did something right here. And then that's now being undermined on some level as though that wasn't useful, because here we still are. And they were tasked with the same thing, baseline or less. So again, if someone can walk me through it, I'm all ears, all ears. So please, I got some movement here. Please, anybody wants to jump in, go for it. I will call you first.
I'll do you. I don't understand what you mean about growth. I mean about getting services. I don't think they're going to get growth, but I do think that there's a lot of strategic policies we could have put in place sooner, so we wouldn't have been in this. And if we would have addressed this a little bit more aggressively 2 years ago and really had what was brought in front of us, really looked in, and it's kind of hard for me to explain, but I can take some more time next meeting if you want me to give you a briefing, because I just don't want to talk, but I'll stop at that point.
Councilmember Doyle.
Just to speak a little to your point, Mayor, I think at this point, we need to look forward. We need to look forward. We need to focus. We have to solve this problem that we are all experiencing, whether we're buying apples at the grocery store or paying for gas. We are already getting less of whatever we're buying with the same dollar. It doesn't go as far. That is just true. It's life. It's very complicated. It's historical for Washington State with regards to how we collect taxes here. It's international. It's incredibly complicated. But the why doesn't really matter, because here it is, and we're in a time crunch. And we have to figure it out, and we have to figure out going forward, taking into account the needs of all the people in our community. And we have a responsibility to provide these essential services, understanding that it will impact people differently. And that is unfortunate, but that is true. We can't make it not hurt. It will hurt everyone here, including us, since we're all taxpayers here, to a certain extent. But we really need to keep our eyes on the prize and move forward and figure out how we can make a decision together. Looking around, looking back, we don't have the luxury of time to do that. We need to just get the job done.
So, sorry, I heard 2 years ago, if we had done something differently, I would welcome that feedback on what that was, because I was here 2 years ago.
Do you want me to make a list of all the different things?
Please do, yes, and enumerate it right now if you could. I mean, I don't know. You were with us. We have a lot of history here, so please, if we missed and listed somewhere, please, let's go back and figure that out, so we're not going to continue listing. So.
There's a lot, and I put it in the email that I sent out last year, and there was negotiations that went awry. There's how we did our salaries, and I'm sorry, I'm just debating back. To me, it matters what we did in the past, because, well, I don't want to get into that, but it does matter, because things were thrown out there, and I think you're getting a little bit upset with me, Mayor, and I'm not sure why, because I think it's one of my duties is to ask those questions and to see what is doing out there with our budget. But yeah, I do know it's going to hurt, and I don't take this lightly, and I just can't throw it out there and say, well, it's just too bad. I have to say, what else can we reduce? And everything is increasing, and we're just being kind of flippant about it.
I will just respond by saying I'm not mad at anyone. I'm definitely disappointed in the situation, and I will just say, hey, I am trying to be thoughtful here, and I have been listening to we're supposed to ask questions, and I will just say, I thought we were supposed to provide solutions. So that's the part where I'm like, I appreciate asking the question, but I'm also looking for solutions, because that's the end of the day. I'm supposed to be doing both, is my understanding. And if any one person's taking that personal, I don't know what that's about, because all 7 of us that I last checked are part of the process. And so in that regard, I think we're just asking these questions differently. And the frustration that you hear in my voice is because I'm not being flippant. I'm not just making statements. I'm actually trying to ground this in something, because at the end of it all, I have accepted either we stay where we are at this level or we cut. But we apparently are afraid to use that language or something, and it's just holding us from getting this job done. Because again, we have to have a balanced budget. We have to inform people of what that budget's going to be. And what I keep hearing us do is, we'll go back and reframe it this way this time. It's not changing the outcome, but reframe it just a little bit differently so I can see it. And that takes more time, but the problem didn't change. Costs still went up, or they're going to have to cut to adjust to the costs. You see what I mean? So there's no personal anybody in here, and I don't think any one of us is being flippant or taking anything lightly. And so as we own those, saying that that's what we are personally doing, you're implying the other people aren't. So again, I want to be as clear as possible. I think everybody here is being thoughtful, not a single person being flippant, and we're going in circles because the language keeps turning us around. So I see Councilmember Matsumoto Wright wants to jump in, and perhaps Mayor Pro Tem is trying to jump in. So let's go Matsumoto Wright first, and then we'll go to Mayor Pro Tem.
So every year and every 2 years, we have the hard job of trying to figure out what to do with our budget. The inflation that we're experiencing, we didn't know that was going to happen to this extent. Also, the finance department had several years of cleaning up to do, and they started from 5 years ago, and then they were going year by year by year. Finally, this year, a few months ago, they finished the last one. And so without having that baseline, we didn't really know where we were. And I think that we should just look at what we have today, figure out what we have to do for the future, and try to make it as easy for the rest of the people in our community as we can, because every city is experiencing this. It's just not us. And so I feel very, very bad for the people who are living from paycheck to paycheck, but they're going to be doing the same thing no matter which city they go to right now, because we're all in the same boat with inflation, with what unfunded mandates we have, and so forth. So I'd like to make it as easy as we can for our clients, which is our community. But we also have to look at our budget and see the reality of what we have to work with. Now you can go. Thank you.
Jump in.
I'll try. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not prepared to philosophize too much tonight, but I do want to be clear that this exercise is not one or the other. It's a combination of both, making cuts and looking at potential revenues to be able to, and it's going to be a balancing act of, and the question is, how much can our residents afford in additional costs that's going to hurt? I mean, let's be honest, it's going to hurt everybody's pocketbooks. Affordability is a real issue out there right now. I won't wax philosophical on that topic right now, but it is going to be a challenge, and we have to recognize that we're looking at potentially, we're going to be asking our residents to pay an additional $500 per year in property taxes, in addition to potentially $20 per car, in addition to potential water rate and sewer rate increases, in addition to potentially a metropolitan parks district, in addition to potential, or somehow dealing with our rec pavilion. These costs are going to add up a lot. And that's just Mountlake Terrace, let alone from what the county, the state, and whatever else is going on out there. So those are real costs that are going to impact our residents hard. And I think that's what Councilmember Sonmore is trying to get at in recognizing the impact of our increased costs. But we're going to have to do something. The question is, how do we balance that? At the same time, we need to be making some cuts. And it's going to hurt the service level. We're trying to reduce the impact of that as much as we can, but there are going to be impacts. And I think, I'm not sure if we're looking at tonight or if it's maybe the next meeting where we're actually working. I mean, there are some things that I have some deep concerns, and I've shared some of them, some deep concerns about, both on the revenue side and one of them is our capital improvement plan, which is already underfunded. If we adopt, one of the proposals is not sending general fund dollars to the streets program, street capital improvements. So that's $175,000 reduction, right? Or it's 150 or 175. And then there's the other one, which is transferring some of the real estate excise tax to the general fund. So that's a total impact of negative $300-some thousand to our capital improvement program, which is already underfunded. So I guess from my perspective, it's understandable not to be sending the general fund dollars to the capital improvement program because we can't afford that, but we shouldn't be taking capital improvement program dollars that are dedicated to that from the real estate excise tax to the general fund. So that's one that I'd be very concerned about. I'm shared my concerns about the development fee increase, but I can my justification, I guess, for accepting that is not cutting community development staff that's necessary to be able to provide the efficiency, to ensure that we're processing permits and providing predictability to the development industry that we're trying to attract and we need to keep here in the community. So again, there's this careful balancing act of trying to figure out what are we going to do and how are we going to address these challenges. I am very concerned about how much we're going to be asking our residents for, and I think we need to try and find ways to limit that as much as possible. And I think that is, and I appreciate all the work that's been done in looking at not only historical budget savings, but I'll be honest, the initial list of 5% reductions was not 5% reductions in the general fund. It was cost shifting, it was revenue increases. But based on what I'm seeing is we've made some adjustments to that, and we're now making progress in addressing real 5% reductions in the budget, and I appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that we're looking at very cautiously looking at every vacancy and trying to figure out, what is this position really necessary? Are there adjustments that can be made in workload, in cross-training, and whatever to be able to potentially not hire? But and I appreciate that we've kind of looked at AI programs, and I think that's going to be very necessary. I think there's huge possibilities for how we utilize AI in the future to help with our workloads, and especially when we're going to be facing growth in this city and therefore increased demands on services, but not having the revenues to be able to pay additional employees to be able to cover it. I think that's going to be really important that we utilize AI to be able to help us address the service levels. So I think policies like that are going to be critically important. I think another area that is that I'd really like to see us address in here is regionalization. I think we need to, I'd like to see us put in writing something that we're adopting, that we're looking to save 2 to 3 FTEs over the next 2 or 3 years, because recognizing, it takes time to put together that program, and we can't just say we're going to adopt it next year and make it work. It's going to have to take time in working with negotiations with our employees, with other cities. But we need to put that in writing, I think, and adopt that as a policy, that is the direction we're going. And that would be an area that I'd like to see us try and incorporate into reductions by regionalizing services to be able to help reduce the impact on the other side, which we're going to have to do, which is increasing revenues on our residents.
All right, we're about halfway through the slide deck when we go back to it.
Thank you all for your comments and discussion. I do want to just quickly address something that you just mentioned, Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Wall. On the regionalization front, I think we are all committed to looking at those options. I wanted to highlight that when we looked at the fleet numbers as an example, we started running, what would our rates be next year, and also be competitive and lower than the commercial market, because we're not going to have a regional partner if we're not lower than the commercial rates. We might bring in another $26,000. And if we increase the number of vehicles that we see from our neighbor, then we will have to increase by having like a part-time person. So it's not always, it's a service, it's efficient, it's providing some value to the city, but to get to cutting like 2 to 3 FTEs, unless somebody else is providing the service for us and we're paying them a fee, like it's complicated, and I think we're all on board with looking at them and finding ways to be more efficient. Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. And I appreciate that and recognize the challenges but I do think that particularly administration, there are, all of our cities are providing the same function administratively in certain ways that we don't all need to be duplicating our own services, and so I think that that's an area where we can work with our surrounding jurisdictions to figure out how do we address a lot of the administrative functions of just running a government.
Okay, yeah, we're happy to talk more about that. And I know you're going to some regional meetings with the city manager, and we will definitely be exploring more. Okay, so really this is an opportunity for you to debate and discuss these proposals so that we know what to bring to you the next time around. So I think that we heard clearly you didn't want to go forward with the Transportation Benefit District sales tax, that you were more interested in the license fee. And so the two different proposals include this, but at different times based on our different strategies and when the timing, kicks in a need for more revenue. And we talked about the impacts last time. Of course, license fees are not super popular, like any fee increase. It would add $315,000 to the transportation fund, which would alleviate some of the general fund contribution. These funds are restricted to the transportation fund. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to talk about this further. If we all feel like this is something to move forward, we'll keep it on the proposal. All right. We also talked about using a general levy lid lift in the future instead of a city-only metropolitan parks district to cover the costs of parks. By using a levy lid lift, if we do make cuts in other areas like safety and transportation, or we didn't meet our revenue goals there, we can broaden the levy lid lift to use for the general fund and, market it in the appropriate way given what we need the money for. The two proposals have different amounts based on the need because Proposal 2 has some different fee increases that Proposal 1 doesn't have. So this would be a vote of the community, and it is a simple majority vote. Of course, this will impact the voters' pocketbooks for sure, as we talked about. And the impacts of not doing this are basically removing our recreation program and doing the bare necessity at our parks and not fulfilling our needs in the other areas. Is there any discussion about this item?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess the only discussion I have is remembering that this is going to a vote of our residents. And if they aren't convinced that we're doing everything possible to reduce costs of government when we go to the vote, we could face defeat, and which would mean some severe cuts in the services we are providing. So I think it's imperative for us to make sure that we're, A, doing everything possible to reduce the impact on our residents, and B, being able to tell the story when we do.
Yes. Thank you. So this one, Mayor Pro Tem brought up earlier, this is transferring REIT from the street CIP to street operations. It's allowable by law. Either $100,000 or 35% of the total REIT funds is allowable to be used for operations. Of course, there's the challenge, like Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, of reducing the amount in the capital fund. I will say that the streets CIP does have several more revenue sources than the general fund CIP for parks and facilities, but both of our CIPs could use more funds. So are there any others that have comments or opinions about this one?
I'll call on myself. Just so I have my understanding, because I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem's concern, because I've heard it at the larger level of Olympia trying to take monies in this same kind of manner. So I can see it, that we're not in a vacuum. That said, the question I don't know is, can we replace that money? Or is it one of those time lost so you never really can replace it? And that's really just thinking about, I would like to think one day we'll be in an economic boom conversation. And so at that point, because in my 7 years, there was a point where we had the illusion of having options of how to spend money and where to place it. So again, I'm asking, if we get back to a real option like that, could we replace that, meaning that in essence it's a temporary stopgap? Because it looks like Peter is talking to Paul in this anyway, and so it's not real money saved, it's readjusting where it can be spent. So.
Yes, you can certainly change your mind on that with a budget amendment at any time.
Thank you.
All right. So in summary, we talked about alternative one or proposal one. This is including all of the reductions. It includes the banked capacity, a levy lid lift in the future, and use of the TBD license fee. So this one does not include those revenue options that we discussed with our recreation program and development fees. The chart on the left shows you the impact of those proposals on our reserves, and the chart on the right shows you the impact of the proposal on the reserves in a recession scenario. So the recession scenario shows a loss of $1.5 million in about 2034. Of course, that's out a ways, and hopefully we would have some time to plan for that, or we can make adjustments sooner than that to make sure we have a larger reserve. But you know, recessions are hard to predict. The second proposal, like I mentioned, I highlighted the changes here. So the levy lid lift is smaller, the TBD license fee happens later, and the fee increases are included there. And then this is the impact on reserves with that proposal. I also wanted to share with you in the community some information about our discount program. So the Snohomish County Assessor's Office has a property tax exemption program. I think it was brought up at the last meeting. I just wanted to share their website and phone number for people to be able to get those resources. There are several programs available, not only for seniors and low-income folks, but there's some other unique property types that have discount programs. So make sure that you take a look at that website, and I did add the income thresholds there for your information.
Councilmember Sonmore.
So can I ask, so we don't know exactly, or so I'm asking how many people in Mountlake Terrace get this right now, and if they're reducing their property taxes, does that mean less property taxes coming into Mountlake Terrace?
I can get you that information. I'm sorry, CRK is not here to help answer that, but we'll get that to you. Okay, and the other thing I wanted to share is that the City of Mountlake Terrace has a financial assistance program for utilities and garbage. So we have just updated that program, so be sure to look at our website. It was updated, I think, last week. So you can, some people will be eligible for a 30% discount on utilities, and we have that program with, and if you are approved into that program, you can also get the free garbage. And it is a limited size trash can. There's details on the website about that. And I also wanted to mention that our utilities have discount programs as well. And those are the websites for our electricity and gas providers.
Councilmember Sonmore.
The same information on that as I asked before. How many people are currently using the utility billing discount, and how does that affect our budget?
Yes, we'll do that. Okay, and I just wanted to reiterate something that Councilmember Matsumoto Wright mentioned, that was, we are not alone. I think we've shared some data from Association of Washington Cities from about a year ago that 61% of cities are facing a budget gap statewide. That was, a year old. I'm sure it's worse now given the state of the economy. And we are looking to take a few steps here. One, we would like to understand if you have any questions for us before the next meeting. We will try to answer them so that you have information walking into that meeting. So thank you for all the questions tonight. I'm sorry I couldn't answer them all, but we will get you answers. If something else comes up, please email Jeff and I, and we will get you answers so that we can all be as prepared as possible in our decision-making time. And again, we have some public meetings coming up to share with the community what is in front of us for long-range financial planning. Of course, we're asking council to adopt strategies. The actions will follow, and some of these actions will require a lot of community engagement, especially things like a levy. So the other thing to think about is the TBD license fee. There's one proposal where it would take effect in 2027, and if we choose that proposal, we'd need to take action as a city council by June 30th of this year. We had shared this before, but this is just the longer term timeline of when other decisions might need to be made for the budget, for levy lid lifts, and for a potential future levy. So we are looking forward to coming back on May 7th and hope to have a little bit of review if you need it and a vote. And please let me know if you have any other questions tonight.
Questions, comments, feedback? Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, everyone, for the presentation, and all of my colleagues for the continued thoughts and conversation. Lots of good food for thought, and I shared a lot last meeting, so I felt like I didn't have a ton to add, but I guess I appreciate the continued work. I think for me personally, the staff proposal 1 is kind of where I am resonating to. I still would really like to see us not reduce the 2 headcount that have service impacts to parks and police. I said that last meeting, I'll say that again. I think that could be offset in that proposal by the increased recreation fees and community development fees that are not included as part of staff proposal 1. So that would be, out of the choices we have before us, and that is, I would echo, I think, where the mayor was in terms of like, we have to find solutions to move forward. There is not an ideal solution to move forward, and so it's trying to figure out, I think to Mayor Pro Tem Wall's point, like what are the right trade-offs to make? And there is real impact to increased fees, and there is real impact to reduce, to cuts in service. And so for me, I feel like the staff proposal 1 is the best balance in terms of those things, or the best balance I think that is realistic for us to achieve. But again, I do think that those increases to recreation fees and community development fees, I guess with the question around kind of particularly the impact on the recreation fees for our residents, I'd love to see if we couldn't offset those 2 FTE cuts that I see as very impactful. I think, again, we hear oftentimes, I think some of the things that our community appreciates most about living in our community is our parks and our sense of safety, right? And there is real impact, like there is lots we can do to be more efficient. And I guess I will name again, I was gonna say, I don't want to look back too much, but I do think it's important, I think to Mayor Pro Tem Wall's point, that people understand where we are at and why we're here and why we are potentially coming to them to ask them to contribute more money. And we are 25 years into these budget cuts. We have, for 25 years, we have every budget cycle. We go through it with a fine-tooth comb. We try to do more with less. We ask staff to get creative. We look for different solutions. And we've done that really effectively. I think if you look at services over the years, we have done a really good job for a small community of continuing to maintain services, despite the fact that our budget has not kept up with inflation and the cost of doing business, which that is what we are doing. All of our other costs go up, and we use that, I think, as we are not immune. City government doesn't exist in a space where we are not impacted by the fact that the costs all around us are rising. We still have to pay those costs. And there is real impact if we don't continue to offer the things that we do. And I think particularly in terms of safety and parks, because they're so integral to the experience of our community members. I appreciate the proposal. I appreciate all of the thoughts. And at least for me, I think the trade-off of the increase in those fees would be worthwhile to protect the service in those spaces. So that's where I'm at generally, but I look forward to the continued conversation and recognize that it is going to continue to be a hard conversation, both as a body as well as with our community, and just appreciate the thoughtfulness that everybody brings to the table.
Others, comments, feedback? Questions? All right. Seeing none, I am going to end with technically not me. I have to find it now. I had it up this whole time, dang it. The suspense, I know. That is really weird. My inbox changed on me. Go back to this. All right, in the spirit of learning about processes and how to make things more accessible, we have an interesting process. If you come in person or you get online, you can speak. But if you write to us, only the council sees it unless apparently you request and you know to request it to see, well, what did the person write? And it just seems inappropriate not to read this one, which I have no idea why it's disappeared on me. Thank you. Could I read it from yours? Thank you so much. So firstly, I, full disclosure, would read this if it said something different. I just think we have not, in the opinion, had too many comments about this, and this person took the time to write to us. So this is from Roberta Hodgson, I hope is how you say that. I apologize. I didn't know if the D was silent or the G was silent. So we're going to go with Miss Roberta. That's how we would do it in my culture. And I'm going to read the whole thing. Mayor and City Council members, I am concerned about the budgeting decisions that you will soon be making to address the budget shortfalls. I appreciate that you have involved some community members to get ideas on how to balance the budget and that the city staff have looked deeply into their budgets to propose savings. I'm only going to pause there to remind everybody on council, you have this email so you don't have to listen to me, and I hope you've already read the email, but those who have not, here you go. After listening to budget presentations to the council, I would like to make some comments and suggestions, which is why I'm reading it now. That's my comment. For background, my husband and I retired and moved to Mountlake Terrace in 2020, and we enjoy the parks and the improvements that Link has brought to our city. Most importantly, the council must utilize the quote-unquote banked funds that are not really banked. Every year since you have quote-unquote balanced the budget by using reserves, losing money by not having those funds in the bank where you can earn interest. Hindsight tells me that that decision to not utilize the city's full levy amount when the transition was made to South County Fire was a mistake. Residents would have complained about the taxes, but they would have been thankful for the fire protection, which would have cost more whether the service were provided directly by the fire district or through the city contracting with the fire district. Taxpayers can get levy relief by applying for exemptions if their income meets thresholds. Keep watching the expenses for duplication of costs and for the services you do not need. Evaluate staff positions every time a staff member resigns to determine whether that job is still needed or if it can be combined. Don't cut staff so much it affects morale, causes staff to be overworked and resigned. New employees are not immediately efficient. Raise fees for services, but be mindful where taxpayers can find relief if they are fund some scholarships to, I'm not sure what happened there, can find relief if they are, fund some scholarships to parks programs for those who cannot afford the costs. You speak of your goals to attract people and business to our city. You cannot do this if you cut costs that will allow you to meet this goal. For example, if participating in the Denmark opportunity with Shoreline is covered mostly by grants and is a chance to work toward your stated goal, you should consider it and educate the residents of its value. The lack of an adequate police force will also limit growth. Residents will always think taxes are too high, but most will pay them and appreciate the services provided. Residents know that everything costs more, and so be ready to explain why. Thank you for reading my suggestions. I appreciate your service to the city. Roberta Hodgson, CPA. Thank you, sir. All right, and with that, we will move to, unless there's questions, comments, feedback, but you'd have to talk to Roberta directly, so that's why I'm going to move on. But thank you for taking the time to write, and again, just kind of recognizing that's an inequity on our part, that you don't know what they've said unless you read it. So with that, thank you all. You are free to move about the country, and we're going to go to the city manager's report, so one of you has to stay there, which is city manager's report with our deputy city manager, Carolyn Hope.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things noteworthy from staff. Well, one, I want to let the residents of Terrace Wood Apartments know that we are thinking about them, and we're thankful that there were no significant injuries or deaths, and thankful to our service providers for responding quickly. And I also received an email, I think some of you may have as well, that our partner at our hotel supported some of the residents on the first night of the fire, and so I'm really thankful for their support, as well as the Red Cross, as Commissioner Francisco explained earlier. This week we had 2 bid openings for the Transit Connection Corridor project, the pedestrian plaza, and the West Side Water Main, and we're reviewing those bids to make sure that they are responsible and they meet all the legal requirements. So we'll get you some of those details in your Friday email and more information as we continue to research the bids. I wanted to mention that several staff have attended a series of Department of Emergency Management trainings with Snohomish County over the past week, this week and next week. Each week was a separate topic, and so we've had folks from police and public works go so far, and we have some more coming up. I really want to give a shout out to Snohomish County Department of Environmental Management. They do a great job with their training, and they have a wonderful facility for us to go and practice responding to emergencies. So super professional, and glad that we can be a partner with them. Last night was our last night of the Community Academy, and I'm so super thankful for all the community members who decided to participate and volunteer to learn more about their city and how government operates, and hope that they'll think about becoming a volunteer for the city if they're not already, and that we have our recruitment going on for boards and commissions. Also wanted to give our staff a big shout out. They have really contributed a lot to making the process fun and engaging and educational, and it's been a great team-building exercise for them as well. And most importantly, I want to let you know that our ARPA reporting has been completed, and we have accounted for all of the $5,962,278 from the feds. And just a couple of reminders for everyone that we have some events coming up. On Saturday, we have Arbor Day in action at Ballinger Park from 9 to 11. You can just show up. On April 28th, we have our utility open house here at City Hall at 6 o'clock. And next Saturday, the city is hosting Celebrating Cultures Across the Pacific at Terrace Park Elementary from 11 to 2. And that's all I have.
Questions, comments, feedback for Deputy City Manager? Councilmember Matsumoto Wright.
Thank you. Do we have any update on the car that crashed into the transit in the middle of the freeway? I hadn't seen anything more about it, so I just was curious.
Yeah, thank you for asking. We referred that one to Washington State Patrol, and I don't have any updates for you on that. But, yeah. Yes, yes.
So, yeah, anyways, it was sad to hear.
Yes, for sure.
Any other questions, comments, feedback? Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Deputy City Manager. Do you have a specific time, I think with the community events in particular, the Arbor Day event and the event the following weekend, do you have a specific time that you want any of us there? Is there guidance in that regard?
I don't have the details on Arbor Day in action, but I can send an email and get you information. And for the other ones, you can just come at the time that they start if you want.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments, questions, feedback? All righty. Then we're going to move to review of the May 7th meeting agenda. Any questions, comments, or concerns about the agenda? I will just leave it at, please be thinking about which proclamation you'd be willing to read to save me some time when I see you in a couple of weeks, because there's quite a few. That leads us to council comments. Any council comments? We're going to go Councilmember Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to share what I think is exciting news. We all know that City Manager Jeff Knighton has Terrace talks a couple times a year. And I spoke with him recently about starting council chats, I believe was the proposed name. A lot of neighboring cities have opportunities for their council to either meet at City Hall and have an informal discussion, not recorded, just an informal ask us anything kind of situation, or go out to the communities. I've seen some cities go to schools, I've seen some go to libraries, some have gone to the fire station, and members of council are there and community members can come and just chat with you casually in a more social environment, less stressful, and it involves us going out to the community. So the first council chat for us will be in the fall sometime. I don't have a final date yet, but I'm excited for it, and I hope a lot of you join me there. I think our residents will really love that and enjoy it, and I think it's a different way of connecting with people in a less formal way out in the community and not here.
Councilmember Murray, I will just add before you do that, that I was on board with that idea as well. So if folks are interested, please inform the city manager or say so now and they can have that recorded. So, but then we'll go Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I would think that's a great idea, and I would love to, once we have the date, figure out potentially participating. Deputy City Manager, maybe just a question for you, and I know this is a topic we've talked about before, but I saw, I think, a news article this week about the Sound Transit starting to charge permit fees, at least at the shoreline stations. And I know that we're already seeing, quite a bit of traffic coming into the light rail station here at Mountlake Terrace. And so I know we've talked about kind of parking mitigation and impact to the local neighborhoods around the light rail station in the past. We haven't, I think, had that conversation in this forum in a while, and so I'm just hoping that maybe we can bring that back to an upcoming agenda. I think that goes into effect May 1st, and would love to just make sure we're staying ahead of, our residents feeling the impact before we're ready with a solution to hopefully address some of that impact.
Sure. I will look to put that on a future agenda.
Now, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Senator. I guess I'd like to have a point of personal privilege. As many of you know, I should start by saying as we celebrate the future with Children's Day, I'd like to take a minute to look at the other side of the perspective. Our elderly parents, as many of you know, I've spent much of the last 8 years caring for elderly parents, and I want to take a minute, first of all, to shout out to all those healthcare professionals that I've gotten to know very well on a lot of different levels, as well as I've learned a lot about healthcare, elderly issues, and end-of-life issues. But first of all, to shout out to the healthcare professionals, everyone from the doctors to the everyone that's involved. I mean, we've got the social workers, the PT, OT, hospice, and particularly the nurses. I really want to say thank you for the nurses who give so much care and compassion for not only the patients, but for the family that's involved. I also want to recognize all those that have spent so much time caring for the elderly. For those of us that find ourselves in trying to balance not only living our own lives, but then caring for elderly parents and the challenges in making it all work. And also all those that have facing the difficulties of the struggles of elderly parents as they age, and how difficult it is, and for those of us taking care of our parents, how much of a burden you carry. I recognize you and challenges you face. And for all of those that have lost their parents and how difficult it is and the huge void in your life. I feel your pain. Thank you.
That was very thoughtful. Thank you, sir. I hate to move forward. Any other comments, feedback, questions under council comments? All right, so we'll end with mine, and I'm going to start with South County Fire. This is just so we're aware. Unfortunately, I don't have the details because I couldn't meet yesterday for various reasons, but they want to get in front of us to talk about a $420 million bond that will be on the November ballot. So just in the spirit of we're not in a vacuum and there's no cake dome over us, those are more of the balancing that we've been talking about that we are going to be faced with. And yes, that reminds us, Snow Isle has said that they are going to be moving forward, and we saw some of their actions around that. I will just say, if you have not read your emails, please do. We asked them for a letter of support if you don't know what I'm talking about. So it's just to remind us that everybody's having to really make some tough decisions right now, but everybody's bills are going up. Nobody is being extravagant. So that said, just be aware of that, and hopefully by next time we come together, because they said that they'll be announcing whatever this is going to be next month, which will be in that month. So maybe you'll hear it ahead of me, or maybe you already knew what that is about, because I did not. Let me go to something that I hope is a little bit more happy, which is tomorrow is the Step Up Conference. And so in the spirit of cutting costs and watching our dollars, but training being important, if that still stayed on the list and we have city staff going. I just want to say thank you in advance. I have personally been involved. I think folks know, so there's a bias there. I am not your MC this year, so I have no bias other than just to say I know the training in the community matters. And so if the staff has so much as one person going, I'm just saying from where I sit, thank you very much, even though I know these are the types of decisions that we'll be making, can we do or not do. And then the last one is a revisit, and all of them are money-based. You should have gotten this email as well, which is for Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Page. You were not here, but we had a discussion last time we were together about the Denmark opportunity. Does anybody need a refresher about what the Denmark opportunity is? Because you're just telling on yourself about not reading emails if you say that, please. I will get to that. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's a very kind way to say speed it up. Thank you. So you got an email earlier this week, because when we delivered the news, which is why I was bringing up that we made that vote, we let Shoreline know the next morning. Well, they came back a couple days later and said, that's very disappointing. And then they had some questions. So this is an email check. You had to read the email, which I know not everybody likes to do. So we don't have to have the discussion today, but do know there's an email where you could read all this on your own, which is why I'm bringing it up. They wrote back, really sorry you can't do that. Was there any talk about just paying out of pocket or coming as a quote-unquote private citizen? Not sure if you had that conversation. So that's their first question to us. I know that answer was no, because it didn't get off the ground as a conversation, and I will just let you know that that was not a perfunctory question that we could have discussed, but it wasn't a conversation that came up. But no, that's the first question. So I will just start there. Are we interested at all in one of the 7 of us paying out of their own pocket to participate, and would we as a council support that, I think is the question that I'm asking right now. Yeah, fair enough. So do know that we at least have one council member who is open to having that discussion. So that's at least one. Do we have a second? Because that's usually how we get to bring these things back as an actual topic. Somebody else has to support that decision.
I thought I responded to that one, to the city council.
Oh, maybe you did. He's not here, so I didn't know if people wrote to him directly.
Because I thought if you're going to, because that's, I didn't bring it up, but I did think about, if you want to go, just pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one option. But anyways.
Okay. So technically, that's 2 that are willing to have that conversation, which is feedback, please. I don't suggest that we change next meeting, May 7th, but no, if folks want that time to have the discussion, because there's a second part to that. And again, you read the email, you would know, so I'm sorry for those who read the email, but I'm bringing it up because I hadn't heard it come up yet. They say, basically, if you choose not to do that, then they say, well, have you thought about having a representative from the Mountlake Terrace community? And they go on to say, ideally, a community group member or a nonprofit. They even go so far as to say perhaps a developer, and name a developer that's in our area, which to me, they're asking us, well, would we as a council support someone from the city going? And I imagine that gets complicated, but it's a fair question to ask. If we don't want to pay, Denmark, the state of Denmark, if you will, and the city of Shoreline are saying, hey, I really don't think you want to cheat your whole city, is what I hear them saying without saying, speed it up, if you will. And so in that regard, if I read between the lines, they're saying, you sure you want to not reconsider this, or at least let someone from your city go, which is just a way to say, well, perhaps what we do is we ask the commissioners, or as they recommended, we do have, they point out the community foundation is up and running. I don't think that's what they're doing right now, but nonetheless, they recognize that we do have foundations. So I guess that would be the next question. If we don't want to do it, do we want to invite others in our city to go on our behalf? Meaning that what would be the point of sending them if they're not going to come back and inform us? And that's no different than what I heard last week of, well, we're going to talk to Linwood, or we'll just ask Shoreline. Well, why can't we ask a resident who has decided to go and cares about my city on purpose? So that's the question that I hear there. So it is in the email. The email is from Friday. But it did start back on Tuesday, but the latest one was Friday, in case people's emails aren't working that way, because it's sitting out there as the question. And unless we want to decide right now, then we don't have to have the discussion, but I want to give Mayor Pro Tem time to think about his options. I believe we had staff members who probably were interested, so I don't want to rule them out. But I will put on for the record, just so you all know, if we would had a longer conversation last week, I had presumed I was in the running to go, and they had offered a second position, which to me made sense, to be the city manager. And so in an offline conversation, I know I had come to peace with, well, my concession to make sure that our residents know that we aren't just jet setting off Disneyland in Denmark or whatever it is people think is going to happen if we do this. Instead, we're going to work, that I am not going to pay to go to work, but I will pay to relocate for a job, which means I was willing to buy my own plane ticket, but there was no way I was also going to pay $4,000 to go to work, because this is work. Whoever does this, there is stuff on the front side and stuff on the back side, not just that week in another time zone. So again, I framed this last week as this is not going to the movies. This is real work in meeting our goals that we've been talking about, and just putting it back that we got a little bit of room here to still take advantage of this, because they do in their meeting with, as my point was last week, hey, you do this now versus have your staff ask you to do this later, or you have your task, you have to task your staff with doing this later. So those are your questions, and I would suggest that we bring it up May 7th unless people want to hash this out now. And again, I want to recognize Mayor Pro Tem has said he's not sure now, so we would be at best speculating on another person who might want to do this. So are we comfortable doing this next meeting, May 7th, please?
When we talked about it last week, it never went beyond the city council and the city manager's office, so it never, other staff members and people out there in our city never came up. But this broadens it out a little bit more. And it's all up to everyone else. If they can, the city apparently can't afford it. But if somebody really wants to go and take this training, and they can do this, and it's allowed under this grant, I don't see why we wouldn't let them go.
All right, I see some more head nods. I see. Okay, all right, well, then I would say if you are interested in being that person to come up with that decision, so maybe next meeting we figure out who that person would be or how we would invite them. I don't know how that would work, but at least we know that we may move forward with this opportunity on behalf of the city. All right, any other council comments? Because I believe that was all of mine. The bond from South County Fire, step up, thank you, and revisiting the offer to send a representative to Denmark. Seeing none, but seeing an offline conversation, I will presume it's safe to, is there anything you want to be on record down there? Okay, then we will call this adjourned.